Welcome to Hot Drama TV.
At the Tencent Star Awards, the lights were bright, the applause thunderous, and the red carpet stretched like a promise. It was supposed to be one of those nights, harmonious, glamorous, perfectly rehearsed. A night where stars smiled, trophies changed hands, and the audience went home satisfied. But in the age of slow-motion replays and freeze-frame judgments, harmony is fragile. That night, the spotlight didn't just fall on winners. It landed unexpectedly on two actresses standing at the very center of their careers. By Liu and Song Zu'er Oppos, they are often called the twin stars of the industry, rising fast, shining bright, and therefore watched more closely than anyone else. And as the old saying goes, when you are popular, trouble follows. A stage where silence speaks louder than applause. The first ripple began quietly. When Chen Duling walked onto the stage to accept her award, the camera swept across the audience. Faces smiling, hands clapping, lights flickering. Then for less than 2 seconds the lens paused on Bai Lu. She wasn't smiling. She didn't clap. That was all it took. Within minutes, clips circulated online. Comments multiplied. Accusations followed. Cold. Disrespectful. Was she unhappy someone else was shining? The speculation escalated because Bai Lu and Chen Duling had once shared the screen until the end of the moon. To many viewers, that past collaboration created an unspoken rule. She should have shown support. Soon, the narrative hardened into something darker. Whispers that Bai Lu felt overshadowed, that old comparisons had turned into resentment. Was any of this proven? No. But in the court of public opinion, absence of evidence has never stopped a verdict. To be fair, Bai Lu's supporters pushed back. They argued that an awards ceremony lasts hours, that no human being can maintain perfect enthusiasm every second, that fatigue is real. And they weren't wrong. Still, this incident exposed an uncomfortable truth about celebrity life. Neutrality is no longer neutral. On a public stage, silence can look like hostility, and a blank expression can be mistaken for contempt. For Bai Lu, the criticism didn't come solely from what she felt, but from what people thought she felt. When gestures matter more than expressions. If Bai Lu's controversy was born from silence, Song Zu'er's came from overinterpretation. That night, some netizens accused Song Zu'er of offending two people. First Zhao Lusi, then Jianci. The accusations sounded serious. The evidence, however, was strangely thin. Let's start with Zhao Lusi. A short clip showed Zhao Lusi passing by while Song Zu'er's face, captured mid-movement, looked momentarily distracted. That single frame became proof in some eyes that she was impatient or displeased. But rewind the video a little further, and a different story appears. Song Zu'er hands Zhao Lusi a heat pack. She drapes a shawl over her shoulders. She leans in not to compete, not to judge, but to care. These are not the actions of someone harboring dislike. Facial expressions are fleeting. Behavior is deliberate. And if we judge relationships by actions, not by milliseconds of facial tension, the accusation collapses almost instantly. A moment caught between words. The second wave of criticism came during Jianci's speech. Once again, a camera angle froze Song Zu'er's face at an awkward moment, this time as she appeared serious, even distant. The conclusion was immediate. She looked unhappy while he was speaking. What the camera didn't show clearly was context. At that exact moment, Song Zu'er was turned slightly toward Liu Yuning, engaged in a private conversation. According to nearby footage, the topic was emotional, one of those quiet, reflective exchanges that leave expressions temporarily unguarded. 1 second later, the camera cut away. But the damage was done. In today's entertainment ecosystem, context is optional. Screenshots are decisive. The invisible pressure of perfect etiquette. What ties these controversies together isn't rivalry, jealousy, or hostility. It's expectation. Award shows have become unspoken etiquette exams. Clap at the right time. Smile at the right angle. React on cue. Never look tired. Never look distracted. Fail one invisible rule and character itself is questioned. For actresses at the peak of their popularity, this pressure is relentless. Every blink becomes content. Every pause becomes evidence. In Bai Lu's case, her restraint was read as indifference. In Song Zu'er's case, her natural expressions were read as intent. Neither interpretation required malicious behavior, only a camera and a narrative ready to be filled. What this night really tells us. So who was right? Who was wrong? The truth is less dramatic than the headlines. Bai Lu could have been warmer. Song Zu'er could polish her expression management. Both statements can coexist with another, more important truth. Neither deserves to be defined by a few seconds on a crowded stage. Public figures are not statues. They are human beings performing under lights that never turn off. And perhaps the real lesson of this Star Awards night isn't about who clapped or who didn't, but about how quickly we forget that humanity doesn't pause just because the cameras are rolling. In a world obsessed with decoding expressions, maybe it's time we listen more closely to actions and judged a little more slowly. Because sometimes the loudest drama doesn't come from the stage at all, but from the stories we choose to tell afterward. And yet, the story didn't end when the lights dimmed and the trophies were packed away. It only began when the audience went home. That night, phones glowed brighter than chandeliers. Short clips were looped, slowed, paused, and dissected. A single frame, less than a blink, was stretched into a personality profile. In comment sections, strangers spoke with absolute certainty about emotions they had never felt, intentions they had never heard, and relationships they had never witnessed. This is the invisible second stage of every award show now. On the first stage, celebrities perform for cameras. On the second, they are judged by algorithms. And the second stage is far less forgiving. When popularity becomes a liability, there is a cruel paradox at the heart of modern fame. The more successful you are, the less margin for error you have. At this point in their careers, both actresses stand in what the industry calls a golden window. Roles are abundant, endorsements line up, visibility is at its peak. But this is also when scrutiny becomes microscopic. A newcomer is allowed awkwardness. A veteran is allowed fatigue. But someone at the top? She is expected to be flawless. Not talented. Not hardworking. Flawless. That expectation is not written anywhere. Yet it governs every reaction online. The myth of emotional transparency. Audiences often say they want realness. But what they actually demand is a performance of warmth, one that must be constant, visible, and camera-ready. The contradiction is obvious. If a celebrity controls her expressions too perfectly, she is called fake. If she relaxes for even a moment, she is called rude. There is no winning this equation. What we forget is that emotions don't obey camera schedules. A person can be lost in thought, physically exhausted, emotionally distracted, and none of that equals disrespect. But the internet rarely allows for neutral states. Online, every face must mean something. Fandom wars and borrowed outrage. Another layer quietly fueling these controversies is fandom psychology. Sometimes outrage isn't born from genuine offense, it's borrowed. One group feels slighted, another rushes to defend, and suddenly the original moment is no longer the point. The focus shifts from what actually happened to who must be protected and who must be blamed. In this process, the person at the center often disappears entirely. What remains is a symbol, and symbols are easier to attack than humans. What responsibility really looks like. Yes, public figures carry responsibility. Yes, awareness matters. But responsibility should not mean emotional erasure. It should not require someone to monitor every muscle in their face for hours on end. It should not mean that a private conversation, a tired expression, or a missed clap becomes proof of moral failure. True professionalism is not perfection, it is consistency over time. And if we look beyond the freeze frames, beyond the slowed down clips, beyond the amplified outrage, what do we actually see? Years of work. Professional conduct across countless events. Colleagues repeatedly showing mutual support, both on and off camera. That context rarely goes viral, but it matters far more than any single moment ever could. The quieter truth beneath the noise. Perhaps the most telling part of this entire episode is not who was criticized, but how easily the criticism spread. It reveals a culture increasingly comfortable with judgment and increasingly impatient with nuance. A culture where empathy is optional, but commentary is mandatory. And maybe that's the real discomfort we should sit with, because tonight it's an actress on an awards show. Tomorrow it's someone else, under a different spotlight, judged by the same unforgiving rules. A final thought before the curtain falls. Award shows will continue. Cameras will keep rolling. Faces will keep being captured at the wrong second. But as viewers, we still have a choice. We can keep turning fragments into verdicts, or we can learn to pause, to ask what we don't see, what we can't know, and whether a single moment deserves the power we give it. Sometimes the most meaningful applause isn't the one caught on camera. It's the quiet decision to withhold judgment and remember that even under the brightest lights, people are still human. And that perhaps is the grace this story has been waiting for.